Have you ever thought about heading south for the winter with your R-Pod? Some of us who live in colder climates dream about this occasionally. My experience is that it can be more than a dream, and with the right planning, can be a reality. In this episode, we're going to be talking about tips for heading south for the winter with your R-Pod. Hey everybody, this is John Marucci. Thanks for visiting the On the Road YouTube channel. This channel is all about helping you get the most out of your R-Pod experience. Before we get going, welcome to the channel. If you're new here, remember to subscribe and hit the bell icon to be notified when new videos are published. If you want to dive deeper, we put more content and photos on Instagram and Twitter at John Marucci. Okay, so let's jump in. So here's some tips about flying south to the winter with your R-Pod. The first one is you got to keep watch of the weather and forecast when you're about to depart. It's very important, and I use mainly the Weather Channel app in order to track for weather. So you've got to watch the weather forecast to look for that perfect window to head south from a northern climate. Number two is keep your packing dates flexible. Now the main reason for this is that you really don't want to be outside packing your R-Pod when you're in the midst of a storm. So you want to check the weather not just for a departure date, but also for packing dates, because you're going to need a couple days at least to pack your R-Pod to get ready for a longer trip south. Okay, the third one is to keep your return and departure dates flexible. Now this is really important, especially in the winter. My experience is that you've got to kind of have a flexibility window for when you're going to depart, so you can look at the weather and then pick the right time to find that window to go south. And we'll talk about that more in just a moment, finding that path to head south, because it's a multi-day trip usually. Okay, and then the fourth thing, and we're going to talk about this in detail, is check out multiple trip path options. So I'm going to talk about here, as it's coming on the screen here, the winter of 2018 trip. We went from Michigan, southwest Michigan, down to Florida. And this was kind of the chart we looked at to make the best possible path to get out of town. Now if you notice this, we're leaving Kalamazoo, Michigan, and this is last January. We had a couple different opportunities, and it looked like leaving on the 11th of January, which is a Thursday, was the best opportunity. But I had two different ways to go. If you were to look at Google Maps, you can go down what's the western route, which is I-65, down Kalamazoo, Fort Wayne to Indianapolis, through Elizabethtown, Nashville, and through Atlanta, and then down to Florida. And then the east way to go is actually I-75, going into Ohio, Cincinnati, Knoxville, Atlanta, and down to Florida. So they're a bit of a diversion, and they're probably a couple hundred miles difference as far as east-west. Now we actually took the I-75 route on the way down. If you're looking at this chart with me, you'll see the reason why. We had actually very warm temperatures to leave. We left Kalamazoo, it was about 54 degrees that morning. Really good temperature to leave West Michigan in the middle of January, actually unseasonably warm. And if you look at these temperatures and the colors here, what you're going to notice if you look at the I-65 route, if we went the Indianapolis route, there was actually a storm coming the next day and a pretty big cold front going to blow through. So if we went the western route through I-65 down through Elizabethtown, we would have gotten to Elizabethtown Thursday night and it would have been fine. But you'll notice the temperature would have dropped pretty quickly overnight, and there's actually a possibility of snow that night. So we wanted to try to avoid that. If we kept going that way, we would have been in the midst of the cold weather going down to Nashville. It would have been warmer when we got to Forsyth, but you notice it got cold at Forsyth. So if you look at the alternate route and the one we actually picked to go south, we start at the same temperature obviously. And look at the difference between Berea, Kentucky and Elizabethtown, Kentucky above. Elizabethtown being a couple hundred miles to the west. Elizabethtown got much colder that night, but Berea, Kentucky stayed pretty warm. The cold front wouldn't have hit it yet, so we stayed in front of the cold front, didn't wake up to really cold temperatures in Kentucky, and then left and went down to Georgia. It only really started getting cold. The cold front kind of followed behind us by a day. The morning that we had to leave Forsyth, Georgia, it wasn't a big a deal. So if you look at this, this is a common way to look at trip planning when you're going south. You pick certain dates, and you have to use your weather app to track the weather, not just where you're starting from, but what you're going through. So important to remember that if you're going to do this trip south in the winter, to track not just the weather you're at and where you're going to be, but all the towns between, the major towns, and where you're going to stop overnight, to make sure that you've got good weather and try to avoid any kind of winter coming up. Okay, so that's the big number 4 there. Number 5 is another basic tip here. Make sure you take multiple types of clothing, optional clothing. You may be in winter weather, you may be in more warmer weather when you get there, but you need to make sure that you've got winter clothes with you for some of the stops, and especially layers and gloves and jackets, maybe even some winter boots somewhere in the back of your tow vehicle just in case you need to get out and do something and the weather turns on you. Obviously the mantra here is to be prepared. Okay, number 6 is, take multiple bedding options. You may think, okay, well, I'm going down to Florida, I don't need to take many layers on my bed, but that's not a true assessment, because by the way, it can actually be cold overnight in Florida, and it should be probably cold overnight as you're going down, so you need to make sure you have layers of bedding that you can take off or put on for winter travel in general. Okay, the 7th one is take along bottled water. You may not think about this, but there's a good possibility you're going to be winterized when you leave. You probably will be, and at some point in the trip, whether along the way or at your destination, you're going to de-winterize and be able to use your full plumbing system again. But along the way, you may not be able to, so you need to bring some bottled water for drinking, for cooking, cleanup, etc. Don't plan on using your fresh water in your freshwater tank because it may just be too cold. You may not be able to de-winterize at that point. Or don't count on a campground to plug into their water system. You may be able to do that, but it's kind of a gamble on your part to count on that. So make sure you have some bottled water with you for cleaning, drinking, and cooking. Okay, so number 8 is disposable wipes. And I can't say enough about these. These are really handy. You can get them fairly inexpensive, bundles of them, say Costco or Sam's Club. But disposable wipes, especially for personal use, just remember you might not be able to take a shower in your RPod because of the plumbing won't be working if you're winterized. But the wipes really are a good secondary kind of line of defense for cleaning, both personally wiping off and also in the kitchen for various things if you don't have that much water. All right, the next one, number 9, is remember easy to prepare and easy to clean up meals. So these are things like microwave items or easy to make sandwiches, things like that. Don't plan on doing elaborate meals when you're flying south. You're probably not going to have that kind of time, and you're probably not going to have the water you want to really clean up dishes and clean up pots and pans. So you may want to just think of either eating out or when you're eating in the RPod, using something very simple like a microwave meal or whatnot. But just keep it simple and keep the cleanup to a minimum. Okay, number 10 is remember antifreeze for flushing. You don't need a lot of antifreeze, but you do need some if you have to use your toilet and you don't want to, you don't have access to the plumbing system, you don't have fresh water. You're going to want some antifreeze with you, and I'm talking about the pink antifreeze, the RV friendly antifreeze that you're going to want with you so that you can flush the toilet if you need to. And that's important to remember to bring with you. Okay, number 11, we're going to talk a little more about de-winterization. So when you get to a place where you can see from the weather that you're okay, you're above freezing, you're just dipping below freezing, it's not a huge deal, you can potentially de-winterize and get your plumbing system working again up to speed. So feel free to do that. We did that on the way down. We did that at Forsyth, Georgia. We didn't feel good enough to do it at where we are in Berea the first night, so we skipped that, stayed winterized, and when we hit Forsyth, we flushed and de-winterized and had full use of the RV plumbing system all the way down to Florida. So just remember that. At some point, you probably can de-winterize along the way, depending on temperatures. Okay, number 12, purchase antifreeze locally. This is a mistake I think we made last year where I brought like 5 gallons of antifreeze and just didn't need that much. The Walmarts in almost any town, even in the south, are going to have some RV-friendly antifreeze in the aisles that have camping stuff. Just look for them. You usually can find it. So don't feel like you have to stock up and bring a bunch of RV antifreeze with you. You probably just need a gallon or so. And remember, if you do have to re-winterize, just stop by your local Walmart and pick up a couple gallons to do that on your way back. And that's a big point. Remember, you do have to come back, unfortunately, unless you come back so late the weather's fine again. But if you're coming back in the winter, remember, you're going to probably be going up into cold temperatures. You're probably going to have to re-winterize with some RV antifreeze there. So anyway, those are the 12 things as far as tips for flying south in the winter. Again, if you like this video, please hit the like button. They have a couple other videos on de-winterization step-by-step that are on the site. And also, top 5 RV freeze warning tips is on the site. 2 good videos to watch when you travel south in the winter. And again, I always invite you guys to share your comments as far as any tips you have. I know many of you are probably more seasoned than I am as far as flying south with your RPod or RV in the winter. If you have any comments, please leave them. You may really be helping other people as far as good tips in terms of flying south. So anyway, we appreciate you guys again on the channel. This is John Marucci. Thanks for watching, and so long for now.